Hello, my friends. Welcome. My name is Joe, and this is the Joe Martino Show. Today, we're going to talk about 10 things that we can do to have better conversations, to have difficult conversations in a productive and helpful way. 10 things that we can do that help prepare our hearts for intimacy, that help create fertile ground for intimacy to grow in our souls. Let's kick it off. This is the Joe Martino Show.
You're listening to The Joe Martino Show, a podcast dealing with all things emotional, relational, and human nature. Joe is a licensed counselor in the state of Michigan, specializing in relationship therapy. He is also the author of the book, The Emotionally Secure Couple. All advice offered in this episode is offered for entertainment and educational purposes only. Enjoy the show.
Hey friends, welcome. I hope today's going well for you. Wherever today is, I hope that your day is going well. I want to talk to you today about some steps that we can all take to have better conversations. 10 things that we can do that if you were to employ just one or two of these, your communication will improve, my communication will improve. And if we were to do all 10 of them, I think we would create a world of fantastic communicators. And so I just want to talk to you about these 10 things. These are things that I've compiled over the years that I have found to be very helpful in how I communicate. And the truth is, this is a learning curve. Sometimes I do these well, sometimes I don't. And I think that's going to be true for all of us. All right, the first thing we're going to do if we want to be better communicators is we're going to seek to understand the other person's emotions and our own. We're going to spend time trying to filter what's going on from how we're feeling. We're going to try to figure out how much attention can we give to what the other person might be feeling, not just what they're saying. How can we validate their feelings? And perhaps we need to challenge them. What are we feeling? How can we validate that? And perhaps we need to challenge them as well. Can we take a holistic approach to the conversation when we're talking about whatever it is we're talking about? And look, this is an election year. This is a really important consideration when it comes to things like, how do you have a conversation with someone that you disagree with? How do we talk about Trump, Biden, all of the things? One of the ways that we do that is we try to understand both parties' emotions in the conversation. This is really important. Number 2, we're going to talk about what we believe. So often we want to talk about why the other person's wrong. We want to talk about why we disagree with them or what we disagree about with them on. But talk about what you believe and why you believe it. Tell me, one of the things that I find most compelling in a conversation that I have with people is, tell me about what you believe and why. I'm not all that interested when people are talking about conversations or trying to have a conversation with me, talking to me about why they don't believe in what somebody else believes or why they believe someone else is wrong. Tell me why what you believe is right. This is especially true in political conversations. Don't tell me why I shouldn't vote for the other person. Tell me why I should vote for the person that you're voting for. Better yet, don't tell me why I should or shouldn't do either. Tell me why you're doing what you're doing. Why do you believe what you believe? Talk about those types of things. Number 3, measure the cost. And this one's really interesting to me. Do you value your relationship or being right more? What do you put a higher importance on? Being right or the relationship? Most of the time, I believe that we should seek to solve whatever problems there are and protect the relationship. It shouldn't be either or, it should be both. But there are times where we have to be willing to risk the relationship. And there are relationships that we should probably end. If you want to read a fascinating book, I'd encourage you to read Necessary Endings by Dr. Henry Cloud. He talks about how healthy things still come to an end. If you never have endings, you're probably not healthy. And so we have to measure the cost and the potential cost for what we're doing. If you want to hear more of my thoughts on that, look up episode 177 or 277, where I'm talking about how we ask ourselves questions for better wisdom. What are questions we can ask ourselves for better wisdom? Number 4, seek points of agreement. As mentioned in skill number 2, we should seek points of agreement. In other words, what are the things that you can say to the person, hey, you know what, I can see where you're coming from. Or you could give them a head nod. I can see that this is passionate for you. This is something you're passionate about. This is important to you. What are the things that you can do that can show that you agree with them? Where can you seek points of agreement with them? To have intimacy, you have to fight against our cultural propensity for all or nothing thinking. If everyone agrees on everything, someone isn't needed. And so in our disagreements, we can find intimacy by working really hard to find points of agreement and accepting our points of disagreement. Number 5, one of the things that I tend to think is obvious but clearly isn't, is avoid inflammatory words. And sometimes this is obvious, right? Like if you're calling names, if you're dropping swear words, those tend to be inflammatory words. Sometimes a word that isn't inflammatory to you will be inflammatory to the person you're talking to. And this is why it's incredibly important that you kind of check in with them, that you try to understand their emotions, that you try to siphon out their emotions or cipher out their emotions, that you work to understand not only what's going on, what's being said, but what they're feeling. This is why it's very important that you try to understand what's going on with them, because that helps you understand the words to use or not use. And so it's just very important that as you lean into this, we avoid inflammatory words. One time I said to my wife, I feel like there's this magical line. And she didn't like the word magical. And what I meant by it was it's unclear. Now, in the moment of me being passionate, in the moment of me being excited, I didn't think about magical being an inflammatory word. Sitting here talking to you about it, yeah, I can see how that would be inflammatory. So I try to avoid that. I don't use that word anymore. She pointed out, hey, you don't have to use the word magical. Okay, that makes sense. Number 6, and this is one that I've talked about a lot. We have to understand that there is a difference between hurtful and harmful words. Sometimes we need to hear words that hurt us. Sometimes we need to hear words that we hurt to hear. Telling someone that they are engaging in an activity that needs to be changed can be hurtful. Attacking who someone is harmful. Or saying something that you know will be hurtful for your entertainment is harmful. Saying something that you know is for their best, that you want what you're saying to happen for their best, even though it's hurtful, is actual kindness. And I talk about this a lot. Hurtful and harmful are not the same. Kindness and niceness are not the same. I once was talking with a woman who had been dating a man for about 8 years. Her complaint was his lack of ambition and maturity. When I asked her if she had ever said to him, like, hey, these are some concerns I have, she was like strongly, no, why would I do that? That might hurt his feelings. Yeah, but without risking hurting his feelings, you're not encouraging him to be better. In fact, I'd argue you're not actually really loving him very well. Is that hurtful to hear? All right, number 7, another one that should be, to me, just very obvious. Be willing to be wrong. Be willing, no, better than be willing, be completely okay with being wrong. Embrace the reality that you will be wrong often. I talk to people sometimes and they're like, well, I'm just never wrong in a conversation. That's insanity. And look, my wife will tell you, my kids will tell you, people that are my good friends will tell you, I love to argue and I will argue passionately. I love debate. I love discussion. I love the exchange of ideas. I love the passionate exchange of ideas. I love it. And I'm also okay with being wrong. I've said this in other episodes. Have strong opinions that you hold on to loosely, that you're willing to change when you get new information. And if you want to have great communication, be willing to be wrong. It's okay to be wrong. I don't know how else to say that. Number 8, look at the bigger picture. And this is going to sound a little bit like, well, what do you value more, the relationship or being right? But this is, you got to look at what's the bigger picture. Is this a short-term disagreement? Is this something that you're not even going to remember in a few days? Do you give whatever your disagreement is time to breathe? Do you give whatever your distress is time to breathe? Because that's really important, because you might be wrong, right? Number 7. And you might not care. Like, it might just be you're tired. It might just be you need ice cream. Like, it might just be you're wore down. It might just be it was a really bad day, and the person that you feel the safest with, the little thing is irritating you. And if you had a nap or some ice cream or just some food, right? The Snickers commercial, you're not yourself when you're hungry. You wouldn't even be bothered with whatever it is that you're bothered with. So you got to let it breathe. At our house, I kind of have a rule of about 4 days. If it still bothers me in 4 days, I'm going to bring it up. Now, depending, right? If it's a weekend, but at work, like, we run really hard. Our family, we work, one of the things we say, and it's a cliche, but we say it, we work hard, we play hard. Well, so there's going to be days where I'm irritated just because I'm tired. I'm wore out. My legs hurt. my knees hurt. I just hurt, and it's okay, right? We have to be willing to look at the bigger picture. And again, taking in some of those important questions like, how much is this going to matter in 5 days, 5 weeks, 5 months, 5 years? Number 9, expect all of the emotions in the conversation to run amok. And this is just something we have to plan on. If you know me, if you've been with me for any amount of time, if you've read any of my stuff, if you listen to any of my blog posts, or my podcasts, read any of my blog posts, you know that I talk about expectations being the important thing. Expectations being the thing that you go down to. So much so that I talk to people like, hey, my wife and I talk about like, hey, run me through tomorrow. What are you expecting? And I look at it, morning shift, afternoon shift, evening shift. Tonight, as I'm recording this podcast, even though I think I said good morning to you at the beginning, I'm actually recording it at night. And so I said to my wife, hey, I got to record a podcast after work tonight. One of the things, if you want to be a good communicator, is you have to expect that emotions are going to fluctuate throughout the conversation, and they're going to run amok. They're going to go up, they're going to go down. And that's okay. They can be like a plastic bag that is caught in the wind, just floating here and there, woo, caught around. It's okay. When we expect it, then we've sort of planned for it. And it's not that it changes it, but we're able to transcend it. We're able to respond rather than react. When we expect that all emotions in the conversation are going to run amok. And it's okay. Number 10, verify your information. And here's another way to think about this. If you couldn't testify in court that what you're about to say is true, don't say it as though it's true. Say it as though you think it's true. There's a difference between me saying you're doing this because, or me saying, I wonder if you're doing this because, I think you're doing this because. My wife kind of had a bad week a few weeks ago, and I wrote it out with her, and then we were traveling and we were talking. I think we were in the car. And I said to her, I think last week was so rough for you because of this thing that happened. Now, here's the thing. I was pretty sure I was right. I was pretty sure I was accurate. But remember rule number 7, be willing to be wrong. I want to position what I'm saying is wrong as though I know it could be wrong. And so I said, I wonder, could it be? And if she had disagreed with me, I'd have said, okay, well, this is why I think it. Would you be willing to chew on that and think about it? We want to verify our information. We want to speak facts, but we want to speak facts including the things that we think are true, right? Because those aren't facts. It's a fact that we think it. It's a fact that we believe it, but that doesn't make it a fact. A fact is something that is verifiable independently of our feelings. And so we have to be able to verify our information and figuring out, this is how we figure out who we can trust. I trust people who admit they could be wrong far more than I trust people who can never be wrong. And this isn't about the passion with which they argue. It's much more about what happens when I say, well, okay, I don't actually agree with that. Here's information that I think disagrees with that. Or when they say, you did this because, and I say, actually, no, I did it because of this. How do they respond? Now, they don't have to change their mind right away. Especially my wife. She has argued with me. But she's argued in such a way that she said, this is what I think. And she gets to think whatever she thinks. All right, let's review the 10 rules. Number 1, seek to understand the other person's emotions and your own. Talk about what you believe, not why the other person's wrong, but talk about what you believe and why. Number 3, measure the costs. Do you value relationships or being right more? And sometimes you're going to have to risk the relationship in order to talk about whatever it is you have to talk about. Seek points of agreement. Seek areas where you can nod assent to the person, legitimately, not fake, not, with this false veneer, but legitimately say, yep, okay, I can see that. Number 5, avoid using inflammatory words. Just don't use them. Number 6, understand there is a difference between hurtful and harmful words, especially as it's coming into you. When you hear something you don't like to hear, that's okay. Ask yourself, was this hurtful or was it harmful? Number 7, be willing to be wrong. This is especially important when how you're positioning your words. Number 8, look at the big picture. Look at the bigger picture. Number 9, expect all emotions in the conversation to just run around. They're going to get caught in the wind, and it's okay. Number 10, verify your information. If you can't testify to it in court as a fact, and it's just something you think or feel, but you could testify to it as something that you think or feel, then you get to say that. I think this. I feel this. All right, I hope these 10 steps are helpful to you. I hope that they help you be a better communicator, that they help you have better conversations that are difficult to have. Next week, talking about difficult conversations, we're going to talk about some things I didn't like in the Inside Out movie franchise. And before you come for me, I didn't dislike the movies, but there is a really important missing ingredient that we have to have in talking to our children about how we deal with emotions. Coming up in the future, we've got some stuff about what signs to look for that your kid might be going through some trauma, some assaults. We've got a bunch of different things that we're going to talk about in the upcoming weeks. I'm really looking forward to it. Thanks so much for listening. We'll catch you next week.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please share with a friend. And hey, give us that rating in your podcast store. Until next time, change possible.